Sinead Caddy from The Makeup Chair. She's going to show you today some tips and tricks using TikTok, little techniques. Are they good? Are they bad? Oh, we'll see. So give her a round of applause, everybody.
Woo. Is this on? Oh yeah, okay. Sorry for keeping you guys waiting for so long. Sorry about that. But yes, I'm mostly on YouTube. I don't actually have TikTok because I feel like TikTok's a little bit behind YouTube. We're kind of done a lot of that stuff, but I thought that would be interesting to show you some of the stuff that we've been doing on YouTube for like 5 years that like TikTok is now using a lot more of, and sometimes they don't get things quite right. But I also want to show you guys how to do a really classic smoky eye. I'm with my Chemist Cosmetics. We have a stand down there. We have amazing deals on our sets, on our individual brushes. Our eye brushes are 5, some of them are 2. Our face brushes are 10. Like, so come on down after this. And if you have any questions as well, I'm going to be on the stand all day today and tomorrow, so you can come up and ask anything. But I'm going to do a classic smoky. I'm only going to do one side of her face because we're running out of time and I do talk a lot. So I always start off with the eyes. This is just going to make sure that we're going to have a nice clean face. So typically when I do a smoky eye, I work from the lash line up, do the brows, come around the face, and then I finish off the eyes right at the end. And this just allows us to keep that like crisp look and a nice clean line underneath. So I'm going to start off. I've already applied some moisturizer on her face. That's all part of the skincare. That's already done. And I'm going to do a little bit of primer on the lids. So one thing about primers is going to add some grip, and it's going to create a blank canvas for you to work on if you add in a little bit of concealer. Now I know a lot of people are like, you can't, it's going to start creasing. It depends on the lids. My lids are very dry, and the older I get, the more I'm like, I have to add a little bit of concealer in with my eyeshadow primer, because otherwise it just starts to go really heavy on the lids. The older you get, this very thin area on the lid is going to start to drag down because makeup has a weight to it, so it's going to pull the eyes downwards. So if I mix in a little bit of my concealer, it just thins it out a little bit more, so it's not going to be as heavy. And I'm just going to apply this all over the lid, right up to the brows. This is going to add some grip. Okay. Really important with the smoky eye that came through, because the one thing about smoky eye is it will show up everything. Every little blemish on your face, every little discoloration. A smoky eye basically just draws the eyes inwards, but then it makes everything else look more like contrasted, so everything looks just a little bit harsher. That's why you have to make sure you're doing everything nice and clean. And I'm bringing it right up to the brows. But as I get up to the brows, I kind of shear it off a little bit. Now, one thing I like to do with the smoky eyes, I also like to apply a little bit of a base. So what this is going to do is it's going to slightly kind of warm, because I'm going to be using kind of a darker brown. So I'm going to use a dark brown as a creamy base. And it's going to sit underneath. Once again, it's going to add some more grip to the actual shadow, so that we're not going to have as much fallout, which is a massive problem when you're doing a smoky eye. So this is going to add a little bit more grip, but it's also going to add some depth to it, because I don't want to just go in with like a black eyeshadow. I think those darkness, and that's what this combination is going to do. So you might say, okay, why did you have to apply the actual primer on the lid? And that was basically to help with the entire lid. This is just going to be placed in a particular area where I'm going to be applying the darker shadow, so it's going to have something to sit on top of. So I'm just going to take a concealer brush. This is the Beaty. And I'm just going to do the lower part right by the lashes. Basically doing like a strip across, really close to those lashes. Now this shadow can actually be used all over the lid. It's a beautiful chocolate shade, but I always like to use it as a base, because as your makeup kind of wears off, you get that kind of chocolatey color still coming through, which is great. So when you're doing a basic eye makeup look, I'm just going to leave that to kind of sit. When you're doing a basic eye makeup look, you do usually like light, medium, and dark. So you have like light, medium, and dark. That's how you kind of bring it across. With a smoky eye, we're going to flip it this way and this way. So we're going to have the dark and then the medium and the light. Your medium shade always has to be higher than your dark. So the dark is going to go down here, medium, and then our light. And it kind of blurs upwards. That's what a smoky eye really is, just that kind of blur. And we're doing one of these smoky eyes, which you can obviously do it across, but I'm going to do it this way. I'm doing it more of the classic way. I'm going to go ahead and set right and kind of brighten right underneath the brows. I have too many brushes to choose from. Let me grab this one. I'm just going to grab this little pencil brush. So this is the E85. I'm going to take the lightest shade. So when you're picking out the shadows for the people that you're working on, you have your light, medium, and dark. The light should be at least one shade lighter or match the skin tone. Your medium shade should be at least one shade darker. So kind of think of it like your bronzer, your contour, and then your darker shade can be as dark as you want. But just make sure that your medium shade works with your undertones. That's why I always like to use like a little bit of my bronzer, a little bit of my contour, depending on the look that I'm doing. Your contour shade is usually cooler. So if I'm doing a cool smoky eye, I'll use my contour. If I want to do a warm smoky eye, I'll do my bronzer instead. But basically this shade is about one shade darker. I can kind of mix and match these depending on how deep I want it to go. But it's just a really important step. Your transition shade or your medium shade, you want to make sure that that works for your undertone and the look that you're going to do. But I'm going to start off by just taking a little bit of the lighter shade. And I'm just going to set just underneath here. And the reason I'm doing this is because when you're doing this on yourself, or if your client tends to, she's so good, she keeps her eyes closed, but if your client opens up her eyes and then this is going to hit up here, we're going to get some smudging because this area has a bit of moisture. So don't leave it till last. If you do this first, it'll just create a really smooth area so that when we put our medium shade in here, it has something to kind of glide over, which is really important. So I'm just applying that lighter shade. To keep it really simple, I'm going to stick with the same brush and I'm going to take my medium shade. So I'm going to kind of mix up a little bit of these two right here. Now these are mattes. I like using mattes and then adding in the shimmers. So the matte is going to go across here. I'm going to start on the outer edge and just work my way in. Just doing little motions. If you are someone who doesn't get a good blend, hold it a little further down and do little quick motions. If you're someone who doesn't get enough product down there, you want to hold it a little further up and just do little back and forth motions. And this is the kind of crease area, or where the eye kind of folds into, you can open up your eyes a little bit for me. So it's basically this area here. That's what we want to hit so that the lid can come out a little bit more and we create kind of like a contour look. So I would get, if you're working on yourself, I would get you to open up your eyes in order to do this so that you can see the shape that you're creating. But when you're working on other people, just get them to kind of open and close, open and close. But we're basically going, you can close again, thank you. We're basically going above, see how far I am above that kind of dark shadow that we applied first? I want to work across here, and then I can slowly start to bring it down. But I'm not going to go down too far because I'm actually going to match these in the middle when I apply my darker shade. And actually, once again, I'm going to stick to the same brush, just to keep it nice and simple and make it really quick. And I'm just going to take the darker shade. So this is that dark, rich chocolate. And this whole time I've been using this pencil brush, it gives me lots of control. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come down from above and I'm going to tap it. And the product that we first applied has kind of almost set, but not quite. And that's just going to create a nice base for this to go on top of. And then what I can do is I can slowly start to blend this up. and then it's gonna start to blur to that medium shade. I should probably get good at trim this one. So I'm kind of blending this upwards, so it should fade into the medium. So we're going from the dark into the medium. And then I'm going to switch to a clean and kind of a blender brush. Let me see. I'm going to take this one. This is, on my eyesight's so bad. This is the E83. And I'm going to take just a little bit, a very small amount of that medium shade. And I'm just going to start to blur the edges again. So as I have a little bit of product on the brush, I'm going to do it this way, just to kind of disperse it. Then I'm going to bring my hand a little higher and just blur and blend the edges. So if you look watching somebody do their makeup and you think their makeup always looks really good, watch how they're holding their brushes. Watch how high and how low they're actually working with their brushes, because that dramatically changes where the product that they're using is going to be placed. So if I'm bringing my hand nice and high, I'm doing more of a horizontal blend in this area. But if I do this, I get more of that horizontal blend. So I'm going to get that nice blur. And don't be afraid to blend. This is just going to be a nice soft smoky eye, so it's not going to be too heavy. Great for like a day to night, because if you add a little shimmer to this, you're going to completely change up the look. But this is just going to be a nice daytime smoky eye. Open up it. And it's going to bring out the beautiful tones in her eye as well. But it's so subtle, which is what I really like. I kind of like that softness. So we're going to move now on to doing the brows. So I'm going to leave in a little bit of concealer and foundation mixed together. The area around the brows depends on the person. It doesn't adhere to makeup in the same way as the rest of the face. So like the area around my brows, it just does not hold foundation. I have to add a little bit of concealer for that like depth. So I kind of mix and match. I think yours should be fine, because you have better skin than I do. Mine just refuses to hold anything in that area. I'm going to take a little bit, just a touch of concealer. I'm going to take my concealer brush and I'm going to start to mark out the brows. The reason I do this is it allows me to get really close to the brows to start with, because there's nothing worse than when you have that gap. You know, you have that gap and you've like done your brows and then you go to do your rest of your makeup and then you have that gap right in the middle. Ooh, it's the same with the hairline. You know, people have that gap around the hairline as well. This just allows, if I don't do anything with the brows yet, this allows me to get really close. It also allows me to see the shape that I'm creating, which is a very important step as well. A lot of people tend to overfill their brows. They don't actually have to overfill. What they need to do is just create a little bit of color. This is fresh water, it's fine. Nobody drink out of it. And I'm just going to take my sponge and start to blend that in. I can't blend over brows, and that's just so you don't get that along. I can kind of blend in because this is a clean sponge. So I can get as close to the brows as I want. And the brows is a very important part when it comes to doing a smoky eye. You don't necessarily have to have them as dark as the smoky eye that you're doing, but you do have to have them defined, because otherwise your eyes will look like two black holes on your face, which nobody wants. So by adding a little bit of definition to the brows, either by cleaning them up and filling them in just a touch, it will just frame the nice shape of brows. It creates that little border, it creates that nice little framework. Now she has amazing brows, so I don't have to really do anything with them at all. But I am going to take just a little bit of brow gel, run them through, and a touch of product just to add some definition. But for instance, when I do this on myself, I kind of have a little bit more work to do so that my smoky eye doesn't completely get lost on my face and then my brows kind of almost disappear. So I add a little bit of extra definition. So I am going to take a little bit of brow gel. If I can find any. Just going to run this through the brows. Seeing as I don't have my gel, I'm just going to use a little bit of setting spray. Pretty much does the same thing. Just going to add some gold. And then I'm going to take just a little bit of shadow just to add some definition. Because she's a blonde, I don't want to go too warm or too cool or too dark. So I'm just going to use a combination of a few shades. I mean, her eyebrows are just perfect. I don't really have to do anything. Brows are incredibly personal. Whenever I'm doing makeup on anybody, I always say, okay, how do you like your brows? It's different when you're doing a model because unfortunately they have to just do whatever you want them to do. But when you're working on clients, you do want to ask, hey, well, how do you like it? Like what is the shape that you like? Do you want them to be really full? Do you want them to be very dramatic, or is it too scary for you to completely change the shape? I had my makeup done once and I loved everything, but my brows were so different from how I'm used to seeing them, and I just felt like I looked completely different. That's why it's always a good idea to ask your client, hey, can I see a picture of how you like to do your brows? Especially if they come up with no makeup on and you have no idea what their brows are actually going to look like. So you need to have a look to see, okay, that's the shape that they like, because you don't want to go too far past that because they will freak out on you and they will be like, I don't like it, but it's the brows. The brows make a massive difference. So when I'm doing a smoky eye, I'm just going to very lightly just add some definition. This is a beautiful brush. This is the E44. It's totally flat, which means that I can kind of create little hairs, and I can also kind of blend out the product as well. Now I can come around the face before we come back to the eyes. And next I'm going to move on to correct and make everything stand out a little bit more. So what I like to do is use a little bit of corrector, but I do it a little differently because I don't like using I'm not going to put pink underneath her eye here. I don't need to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use a concealer that has a slightly different tone. So I'm going to use a concealer with a pink tone or a peach tone, and I'm going to apply that, and that is going to counteract that without me having to use I gotta use this, I gotta use this, I gotta use this. I'm just going to use a concealer with a slightly different tone in it just to add in. So this one right here, this is a rose one, so it has a little bit of pink tone in it, and I can use that to correct anything underneath her eyes. So that was the one that I was using. I don't know where the camera is. That was the one that I was using, and then this one has that slight kind of pink tone, so that's going to counteract underneath the eyes. And I like to do this first, and then I go ahead and apply my foundation, and then I go back in with a brightening concealer. So rather than and then after, I kind of just do this. I apply, use my brightening one just to add a contour highlight. You want to apply this where it is, and they're just place it here, and then just blend it, and you're not yeah, that works. That's the area that you have discoloration, or that's the area that you need to focus on. But for instance, she has a little bit of darkness just in here. Just be oh. Then you do it on yourself, and you're but why isn't it working? It's not your fault. It's just that you have to customize it to work for yourself. It would be undo what I've already done, which wouldn't work either. Which is why I didn't do anything with the blending whatever is left, just to kind of blend it in this area, and then I can take my sponge and start to blend it out. And our sponges today are only €5, which is awesome. And then set, it's like 6 of them. It kind of looks like a little egg container, like 6 dozen eggs. That's 10, which is just amazing. And they're kind of like different, almost different textures as well. Like some of them are bouncier than others. I like a really good bouncy sponge. It's very hard underneath these lights to see what lightness I need to add in there. I'm also going to use just the edge of the sponge just to clean up this area here. So when you're doing angles, I like to make sure that I'm following the same angle throughout the entire face. So you're going to take your brush, you're going to line it over the edge of your nose, edge of your eye, and edge of your brow, and that's a nice angle for you to blend your eyeshadows in from. Now if you want to like extend the eyes, like everybody on TikTok likes to extend their eyes and make a cat eye or a fox eye, you basically create this angle. You're going to just nudge it a little bit. So then your angle is still going to be going upwards. It's just going to come out a little bit more. So if you want to blur this out, you can just follow your natural angles on your face. So you do it like this, or you can use the top of your ear and the edge of your lip as another angle. And this is what's going to work for you. And another thing that I just found out on TikTok, which I actually think is pretty good, is one of those do's, is to follow that when you're doing your concealer mapping and just go like this angle, so basically bringing your lighter shadows going up here, up on the edge here, a little bit from the corner of the mouth and from the corner of the nose, and it basically creates a lifted appearance. You don't need that because you're young, so you don't need to do that, but it's a great way for working with mature faces, is just to add that kind of lifted effect using concealer. I'm going to go ahead and apply my foundation, and I'm just using the same brush. I'm going to focus it mostly on the center of the face, a little bit down here, and then we can blur them into everything. Now this is a little cooler than her neck, just a little bit cooler and a little bit lighter than her neck, but I can go back in then and add in my bronzers, my blushes, and change it up that way. Don't feel like it has to be a perfect match, because you can do different things with the face. Your face is always going to change compared to your body, just depending on how much sunscreen you're going to be wearing, if you put fake tan on. So don't feel like you have to have like multiple foundations. You don't. You just need to have something that's going to work with your undertone, but also work with the texture. Don't worry about the shade so much, because you can make those adjustments with, your green contours, bronzers. That'll all do that work for you. I'm going to take my sponge again and start to push this into the skin and blend it out. I don't know if you saw recently, but like this whole trend going around on TikTok where you mix your foundation with water. Have you seen this? You mix your foundation with water and then you apply it onto your face, right? So you literally just pour foundation into there, mix it around, put it on your face. And I've seen the results and I'm like, looks great. But a damp sponge does exactly the same thing. Basically, a damp sponge kind of shears off the product that you're applying. So it does the same thing as just applying it using that whole technique of putting, I wouldn't recommend it. Just use a damp sponge. That's all you need to do. Now this foundation is setting really quickly under these lights. So one thing that I would do is I would take a little bit like spray more and just spritz this again. Or if you want it to last even longer, you're just going to take, don't use a mattifying one, but you're just going to take kind of a hydrating mist and just spray this onto your sponge. And then once again, go back in and start to push the foundation in. It's going to help it last a really long time. great for getting like into the edge of the nose, getting right underneath the eyes, because you're almost setting it as you go. I'm just pushing and pushing and pushing a little bit more. Really important when you have a smoky eye to watch for the texture and how much coverage that you want on your face. Now with this one, it's a very soft, subtle smoky eye, so we don't need too much coverage. But if you were doing like a really like black smoky eye, you need a little bit of extra coverage. In the same way that I said before, like a smoky eye will show up every imperfection on your face. So you do have to make sure you're using something that's a little full coverage. Don't go for applying multiple layers of foundation. Just apply a foundation that is meant to have full coverage. And then for any areas where you feel like, hey, I'm not getting enough coverage, that's what your concealer is there for. That foundation is so good. It's the Fenty Beauty one. It looks really good. I like it. Now one thing with the smoky eye, not so much this one because it's so subtle, but like with a darker smoky eye, is that it can make your face look really flat, which we don't want. We want to add in a lot more shape and dimension. So you want to make sure that you're using your contours and your highlighters and brightening up the face and kind of deepening the face as well, just to work with the smoky eye. So I'm going to go ahead. Actually, what time is it? I'm just wondering if I can do cream contour or not.
5 to 2.
5?
5 to 2.
5 to 2? Oh my goodness. Okay, I'm gonna hurry up. Alright, I'm gonna go straight in with a little bit of powder, setting powder. This is the IT Cosmetics one. And it is a dream to work with because a little goes a long way. And it sets everything in place. And the reason I want to do this and set everything in place is so that I can go in with my powdered products, because I don't want to go in with powder products like powdered blushes, powder contours at this point, because it will adhere to certain points. Your entire face is going to set at different rates. So this foundation is going to hold to certain areas at different times as it slowly starts to kind of blend into the face. So by applying a little bit of powder, I'm just going to make sure that the entire area is at the same kind of blending setting point. Now, if you're not a big fan of powder, first of all, this powder is great, because if you're not a big fan of powder, this powder is very, very finely milled, so it works great. But if you're not a big fan of powder at all, I would actually use the setting spray. Now, in order to blend everything really nicely, I am going to take a little bit of my bronzer. I love this brush, it's so soft. It is the F85. I'm going to take a little bit of this bronzer. And we're not going to do any stripes. Okay, gone are the days that we need to do any stripes in the face. Sometimes it's good. Wise, like if I'm doing a YouTube video, I'll show you guys where I'm actually placing it. I blended it out. It's just to basically just show you the shape that I'm creating. But we don't need to do any stripes on the face or anything. I also don't need to move our face. Keep your face still as possible. I keep it nice and high. And we're just going to start at the top of the ear here. And I'm kind of tapping and blending. Just to very subtly, like it's so subtle, but it's just going to catch your cheekbones. We don't necessarily have to do like a solid line down here, because that can almost drag the eyes downwards or drag the entire face downwards. So I'm going to keep it nice and high. Bronzer should be a little bit higher. Your contour can go a little bit lower, but I think everybody kind of overdoes their contour a little bit, they bring their contour down too far. Whereas if you keep it a little higher, it's a lot more flattering. I'm also going to bring this way up and then across. I'm not going to bring it in all the way in here. I'm going to go upwards and across. Have on your face. Take a little bit more. And I'm just going to bring this along here, just along her jawline. And then I can blend it down and kind of blend it up. Now I'm holding the brush a little further down the handle so it kind of blurs and blends everything. So it kind of creates, like instead of doing this, which has a lot less movement, holding it down here, so it's kind of very lightly kind of touching the face. And then I'm going to add a little bit of blush. I'm going to take my blush brush. Actually, one thing I do like to do with a fan brush is that's a really good brush for doing pretty much your contour, your blush, and your bronzer. It just depends on how you do it. So if I'm doing blush, I tend to do it this way. If I'm doing my contour, I can get it in this way. And I can also use it to blend out my bronzer as well. But I'm not going to use that today. I'm going to use this brush. This is the F04. I'm going to take this beautiful color here. Not too much. And I'm going to keep it nice and high. And I like to keep it about 2 finger lengths away from the nose and nice and high. So we're kind of going this way across the face. I don't need to bring it down here. Not for her face shape. I want her cheekbones that are sweeping shimmer in it. So basically doing the highlighted effect. Blush is so pretty on you. And an extra step that I like to do on the eyes is I like to take a blending brush and I'm going to take a little bit of this. And what I'm going to do is, this is something that I learned off TikTok and it actually, dare I say, is actually pretty cool. Close your eyes for me. You're going to place your eyelash curler closed right here. This is easier when you do it on yourself, but you're going to place it right here. And it's basically kind of puffing your lid. And then you're going to take something like your blush or your bronzer and you're going to go above it and use this as your line. So just like this. It creates a really soft fade for the eyeshadow. So it's going to bring the entire look together. To the face as well. And then just to do underneath the eyes, because I am running out of time, I'm just going to apply a little bit using, use this guy. This one that we used on the brows, because it's a nice straight one. Just like up for me. I'm just going to smudge this. I always start in the middle like this, and then I'm going to blend it up with whatever's left over. And then bring it right to that inner corner as well. So when we are doing our 1, 2, 3, like this, we're going to flip it this way. So the darkness is going to be at the lash line, then the medium shade. Always do your medium shade next. Don't forget it. Don't just apply black underneath. You have to apply a little bit of your medium shade. Because that will create that nice soft blend for you. Going to brush off any fallout that we have. Have I run out of time? No? So we do the lips really quickly. When you're doing a smoky eye, you have to make sure that the lips are defined but not concealed, okay? You don't need to do the concealed look anymore, that's gone, right? Not the black smoky eye with concealed lips. It's always better to have a nude lip, which is different from being concealed. So if you want, take your favorite nude, whatever, or favorite neutral shade, add a touch of concealer to that, and that will be your perfect nude. Does that make sense? So neutral, a little bit lighter equals nude. That's what we would do. But I do like to align the lips. And I'm just holding it here so I have a little bit of control. And I don't go all the way up here because that will pull the lips downwards and make you kind of look sad. So I'm going to start in the middle here, bring it to about this point, and then I kind of almost bring it down in like an O shape. I mean, she has amazing lips anyway, so this just makes my job so easy. And then when I'm doing the edge, I do the same thing. I'm kind of ignoring right here. This doesn't work for every lip shape. Obviously, there's always different lip shapes out there. But if you want to overline in particular, this O shape is great for that because you're going to focus mostly, go high here and bring it down. But don't bring it all the way out because if you blur, if you over blend all the way out here, kind of looks like a clown. You can overline, but just make sure you're keeping it within this point here. And then I'm going to take my nude. So like this is a perfect lipstick to go with that blush, but I want to tone it down a little bit by adding in a little bit of my concealer just to make sure it's more on the nude side rather than the neutral side. So just a touch of concealer mixed in with that. So we still have a little bit of pigment. I'm also kind of blurring and blending the edges of that liner as well.
This is your 1 minute warning.
And see, that is more on the kind of neutrally nude side rather than the full concealed lips. What you can also do is take a little bit and just tap it in the middle. But I love kind of mixing and matching my products to make sure that it works for me. And also on the waterline, I'm just going to take a little bit of pencil, just look up for me. This is going to add just a little bit more of a smoky finish. If you're ever afraid to apply pencil on your little waterline, or even your upper one, make sure you're looking in the opposite direction where you're applying it. Because it's your pupil that causes you to blink. So as long as your pupil is like, if you're trying to do it over here and then over there, it just make sure that your pupil isn't near the pencil because that's going to make you look like this. So just look in this direction. It just makes it ticklish. And that looks really nice with your eye color as well. Add a little bit of mascara. We can't do too much mascara because she does have extensions on. And I always like to just do this as my final step. I know it's a bit weird. People are like, always saying this to me that I always apply my mascara last, but it is just my kind of finishing step. And we would do fuller lashes, but obviously because she already has extensions on, we're not going to do that today. And the final thing is just to mist it. I will do this multiple times as I apply as well, just to make sure that it kind of sets everything. It's going to keep everything in place for me. I usually have a little fan that I use just to dry that off. But that is just a really kind of quick, simple, everyday kind of smoky eye. I would wear this all the time. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. I think I'm running out of time.
Yeah. I'm so sorry. I tend to talk too much.